Honestly, guys, what I'm about to show you from this Fanatics Live breaker is some of the most insane casino-style breaking that I've seen probably ever. It's right up there with some of the most ridiculous things you'll ever see in this space, and it's one of those ones that breakers that are operating in the industry doing things above board should be very unhappy with, and very much so pointing the finger at these individuals because they're the ones that are ultimately going to cause the downfall of this industry if it does happen, because it's stuff like this that is utterly unacceptable in my opinion. Now, this was brought to my attention from somebody that wants to remain anonymous. Obviously, I'm going to respect that. So I'm going to play the clip for you now and then obviously share my thoughts in a sec. So just watch it. Watch how ridiculous this thing is. Listen to the music playing and then we'll come back in a sec.
Products tab, if you click over that on the screen right now. There we go, GP Hoppy. Let's do another one here. And feel free to watch as we keep it rolling. All right, hey, Huntsville hitters, we're back to the $49 cards. $49 price stack, I should say. Yep, perfect. Excellent, excellent. Both checklists are available, that's right. Here we are, level 1. Box 1. Level up, excellent, we're climbing. All right. Level 2's rolling out. All right, let's bust on through. Let's get on out of here. We're going box 1. Oh, game over again. Come on, we gotta get through this. We gotta bust out these game overs, but there we go.
So as you can sort of see there, it's straight out of, a carnival style game, straight out of a casino in terms of, a 3-card Monty style approach to breaking. And it's crazy to me how this stuff is sort of allowed to perpetuate on Fanatics Live platform. Some of you guys might not see a big deal with it, and that's because you've grown accustomed to some of these ridiculous breaking methods that people are using these days. I just don't understand what's wrong with just using a traditional approach to breaking. Random teams, pick your spot, etc. Why do we need to go to this level of detail to sort of break and then to also offer some kind of repack service? Now, you guys will see there, basically there's multiple tiers. There's 5 things to choose from, essentially a game of Monty. You pick a number, the person then opens it, and that determines whether or not you go up to the next tier in order to get better cards, or you bust and you get whatever card is valued at that specific tier. And I think the guy mentioned that it was, $49 to enter the ladder, and then you'd go from there. But one of those ones that I think if you have, a regulator watching this space kind of closely, they're going to sort of see this and say, that's not card collecting, that's not card breaking, that looks like gambling. Why are we sort of allowing this, and why are we allowing the tax revenue to not be captured off the back of that? Because ultimately that's what government entities care about, right? And I'm not an advocate for regulation, and I know people have sort of hated on me for that in the past, but when I see things like this, it just makes me incredibly uncomfortable. And the breakers that are out there doing things the right way should be asking the same question, because why do you have to go ahead and offer services like this to break? Like, why can you not just break traditionally? And why is Fanatics Live comfortable with this sort of thing happening? And the reason why I'm sort of extra, annoyed with crap like this is because when something like this comes off, people try and replicate it because they'll say, actually, you can make good money off the back of it. And then people try and find new ways to get that edge, or new ways to one-up each other to be, the best value proposition for a customer. But ultimately, the people that are sort of entering this are doing it because they want to get rich, and they're sort of targeting that. And the risk becomes, well, the Monty going on, how can you actually trust, what the person is doing? Are they manipulating things? Are they doing this sort of stuff to put more of the odds in their favor? And I would say ultimately that's probably what is happening. And this stuff might be above board. These guys are probably not scamming. I've got no accusations towards them from people that they are in fact scamming. But it's just one of those methods like, well, is that really breaking? Do you need to break like that when there are so many legitimate options out there? And that's what I want your thoughts on down below, because when I see something like this, I see breakers shooting themselves in the foot and ultimately ruining the industry and sort of biting the hand that feeds them. Because all the repackers out there that are doing things the right way are going to see this and saying, you guys are spoiling my industry. And what's eventually going to happen is that somebody's going to keep taking this too far until it reaches a point where it gets, unnecessary eyes on them. And you guys have done it before, we'll say, with regulation, we do not need it. Why you keep talking about this? Why do you keep talking about this? Well, I don't care for the government intervention, right? I don't want to see that happen because I think it's ultimately going to be really negative for the industry if it does, in fact, happen. The reason why I want to see more, regulation, even it's from a fanatic's perspective in terms of, watching this sort of stuff themselves and not allowing this kind of thing to happen, is because these businesses, these breakers that operate like this are ultimately preying on the individuals that are entering into the break. And as always, people like Mike Gio will come out and say, well, people need to take some self-responsibility and the like. But the thing I'll push back on that, right? When you go onto any sports book, when you go onto any, gambling platform, because of the regulations that they're, having to abide by, there are things in place, there are controls and measures put in place for those apps, for those platforms to protect users from themselves. And that's either through these platforms having to monitor things in terms of spending, transaction volume, numbers of credit cards, fake accounts, all those things, right? But even then, as a user, you typically have the option to ban yourself, to set limits, to set deposit limits, to set temporary locks on your account, etc. Right? There's things in place that monitor and protect customers. And because, Fanatics Live is not a gambling platform, those are not there. And because breaking is targeting that same sort of mindset, right? They're gambling, they get rich quick mindset. You've got people going into these platforms and being taken advantage of, because you go sit in some of these rooms and the way breakers are trying to sell the breaks to these customers is sickening at times. You've got people in there that lose thousands of dollars. They lose 5 figures in a night. And you've still got the breakers saying, what, keep chasing, right? That stuff is not okay in my opinion. And ultimately, people need to take responsibility for themselves. But you guys need to understand, if you've ever known somebody that's a gambling addict, this stuff is like a disease, right? People cannot help themselves. And that's why the regulation for actual sports books and gambling platforms have structures the way that they do, right? They're there in place because it needs to be there, because history and, studies and research has shown that people cannot help themselves. And in order for this sort of stuff to be done right, you need to have those kinds of measures and protections in place. And when I see Fanatics Live sort of allow this stuff to run wild, it's like, guys, you're opening yourself up to a can of worms. Like, you really should not be allowing that kind of thing to happen. And even just like the ethics of it aside, right? Would you feel comfortable, like, running that platform and seeing people get taken advantage of like that? And again, some of you guys are going to hate on me for sort of saying that, because people need to take responsibility for themselves. But like I said, you can't help yourself, especially if you've been in a situation like that before. I like to gamble every now and then. And, sometimes you get into a point where you're chasing, right? It's hard to sort of avoid that. And when I see this, I don't like it. I don't understand why it needs to be there. And there are so many other ways to sell breaking and have fun doing it that you don't need to be doing these kinds of games. And like I said, eventually you're going to piss the wrong person off, or you're going to get the attention of somebody that you don't want to get the attention of. And they're going to come and say, well, why is it any different to any other forms of gambling? And then, my concern would be, what happens when people start getting banned, or this actually starts getting banned? What does that do to the hobby? What does that do to the liquidity that's currently in our hobby? What does it do to then the price points of packs and boxes and individual, singles, etc.? Because if, let's just say hypothetically that breaking was to stop like that overnight because a regulator came in and said, this is gambling, Fanatics Live, whatnot, you need to fix your shit. We're going to stop this from happening. This is unacceptable. We need to sort of protect our citizens, right? So let's say that happens. What's going to happen to all that money that's, meant to be coming into this industry? Like all these people spending on breaks, and these breakers are no longer going to buy product because there's nobody to sell it to. What does that then do to the liquidity of this industry? If nobody's buying the boxes, does that mean the prices come down, which then means maybe more people buy initially, but all these people that have all this, money into this industry, right, are going to dip because they can no longer make the money off the back of breaks or selling boxes, or singles prices comes down. It's going to be like a domino effect. It's going to keep getting worse and worse, especially when you sort of think about how many repacks are sold on these breaking platforms, because that brings so much liquidity to this industry. Okay, maybe box breaks themselves can be pushed to the side for now, but look at repacks. Repackers are going to shows and they're paying top dollar for these cards because they know they can put a $500 card in a $1,000 repack and make so much money, right? And they do that and take advantage of people because they make really big margins. They put shit cards in these repacks. People don't care because they want to try and get rich quick. If all of a sudden repackers can no longer sell their repacks on these platforms, or it's a lot harder for them to go ahead and do it, that means these repackers are not going to be going to shows anymore and spending the kind of money they're spending, which means people can't sell their cards for the same price as they were, which means maybe they're holding things for longer, which means they then stop buying themselves, which means what? The hobby prices continue to come down because people have stopped spending money because they've lost that liquidity. And I think it's ultimately incredibly artificial. And I've explained that many times in the past, guys. Watch some of my older videos. But I'm going on a tangent now. That's just my fear when I see stuff like this, the domino effect that it's going to have. And I want you guys to share your thoughts down below, because watching this, repack game, this breaking game is just absurd. Like that is straight out of a casino. That's straight out of 3-card Monty or whatever it's called that you see on the streets being played in movies, where you sort of are seeing it and you want to play because you're like, sure, I can find the card, I can find the dollar bill, I can find the Queen of Hearts. But you know what? The odds aren't in your favor. It's one of those ones where you see it and you walk very fast away. Yet because it's happening on a Whatnot or a Fanatics Live, you're like, fuck yeah, I'm going to jump in. This is great. You lose all inhibition because people are dumb. And ultimately, like I've said a few times now, I don't understand how Fanatics Live is okay to have this happen on their bloody platform. Because you guys might say, well, Dan, you're a fucking idiot because Fanatics make a crap ton of money off the back of these transactions. But ultimately, this stuff continues and perpetuates and gets worse and worse and worse. And these breakers keep trying to one-up each other. Eventually, it's going to reach a point where maybe Fanatics can't sell these things anymore. So guess what? They've got no annuity, right? Because they can't sell things in the future because they get banned, right? They can no longer do it. So is it really fine to make the money in the short term if the long-term risk is maybe making no money? It's like, guys, that's what I'm coming at from. That's where I'm coming at this from. Fuck. My brain's not working today, guys. Apologies. I hope you liked the video, and I won't share. You'll share your thoughts down in the comments below. Anyway, cheers.